Hello and welcome back to the 50th birthday celebrations of BASW. My name is Catrice Horsley. I am the MC for the 2 days of us being together. And I'm not the only one who wants to celebrate with you. Here are some more people who want to say happy birthday, BASW.
Happy birthday, BASW, from the old mugs.
A very happy birthday, and may you enjoy many years ahead in serving members.
Congratulations, BASW, for achieving 50 years.
Happy birthday, BASW!
Wishing BASW a happy 50th birthday. Cheers!
Happy birthday, BASW. Thank you for all the support and opportunities you've given me over the years, and I'm looking forward to your 100th birthday.
Happy 50th anniversary, BASW. I'm Russell Hogarth, BASW service user, carer, stakeholder, representative. I'd like to congratulate you on the 50 years of excellent work and to say what an honour and a pleasure it's been to be part of the BASW 50th anniversary steering group. Keep up the good work, guys, and keep making a difference.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I keep on wanting to join in with the beatboxing with but as you hear, I can't do it. So I will not force that on you. So I am calling myself the thread bearer of the conference. I am taking threads from one session into another and collecting threads and taking them into the next. And for me, this is a very exciting session because it's talking about the future of social work. And I said in the first session, I think, that we need to leap into the future from the present, and we need a strong and stable surface to leap from. But the surface of this present, this foundation that we're standing on, has been caused by the past. And there may be crevices and there may be boulders that make our footing unstable. And this has come through in the whole conference. We have talked about how BASW was set up. We've talked about the history of social work. We've talked about radical social work. We've talked about diversity. We've talked about the stories that aren't being told, colonial narratives, and how social workers were involved in some of the stuff that now we'd look back at and go, oh, that was a mistake. So what is this future and where will it lead us? We can't know until we address the past, and we've been focusing on that. We look at the present and we've been focusing on that so that we can head into the future. You all need to know that this session is being recorded, and at the bottom of your screens there is a chat box, and if you want to just offer us some ideas and chat with each other like you would do at a conference, go and get a quick little pint of Guinness, which is what I want. That's for your chat box. If you have very specific questions for the panel, that's the question and answers box, and they will be fed back in, so the panelists will try to answer them during the session. So without further ado, I will hand over to the host of this session, The Future of Social Work, Bright, Confident, Diverse, ? And the host is David Brindle from The Guardian. All yours, David.
Thanks, Catrice. Great threading there. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to have this small part in BASW's 50th celebrations. I've been reporting on social work for, let's just say, a good number of years. And it's great to see BASW now in such rude health, I think, and growing strongly and playing such an important role in policy and practice. As Catrice said, we're looking forward in this last session of the virtual festival, thinking about what social work is going to look like in years to come and how we get from here to there. The title of our session suggests it could be a future that's bright, confident, and diverse, but of course it then adds a question mark. So let's look at the chances of that happening. We've got a great panel and we'll learn more about them as we go. But just for brevity, we have Reshma Patel, who's an expert by experience, who helps student social workers gain an understanding of the issues facing people they're training to work with. Ian Thomas, who's a BASW patron, who, as we shall no doubt hear shortly, has faced many challenges in his life, but now works with a charity specialising in fostering and children's services. Emma Grady, who's a second-year student in social work and adult nursing at Edge Hill University, and chair of the BASW England Student and NQSW group. They're all appearing as we speak. Becky Salter, she's a second-year social work student at the University of South Wales with a background in social care work and management. Becky and Emma, by the way, are both co-founders of the Social Work Students Hub, but have never actually met in person. So Becky, meet Emma, Emma, meet Becky. Dominic Waters, who's on an MA social work course at the University of Kent, and is a single parent trading on social media as Single Dad Social Work Student. Lena Dominelli, Professor of Social Work at the University of Stirling, with a special interest in responding to extreme events. So she's been rather busy recently, in fact, since early January, when she first started supporting social workers dealing with COVID in China. And Jerry Nazowska, who's BASW's UK chair and our host. We're going to start with very brief reflections, just a couple of minutes really, from three of our panel, Reshma, Becky and Lena, which I'm sure will throw up some issues for the rest of the panel to develop and indeed for you viewers to comment on. So let's start with Reshma. Reshma, what does the future of social work look like from your perspective as someone who's had support from social workers now for a number of years?
Yeah, I'm off mute. Sorry, I was just checking I was off mute. For me personally, I want social workers to remain as confident as they have been throughout my life. I've had social workers in my life for the past 35 years. In my eyes, social work has already changed from doing things to people to doing things with people. So let's continue to do things to people. We need to celebrate this and continue on for the next 50 years at the same pace. I came into contact with social workers when I was about 16. I don't remember much about that particular social worker. However, what I do know is that they enabled me to go to college and university with the right support in place. His assessments must have been carried out accurately, respectfully, and with the right-spaced approach, because I did get to university. It provided me with what I classed at that time pretty good support. I did not then see a social worker for many years until I eventually contacted them. In my opinion, social workers made a huge difference in my life. They connected me to the right housing options, benefits, other professionals, and ultimately have always been an essential support system for me until recently. They even supported me into accessing continuing care and direct payments. Social work needs to be remembered all the time. It's a profession that means a lot to the general public, and we always think about the safeguarding and all the things that come on the media, but we forget people like myself that have been enabled by social workers to live a very independent lifestyle. So why is it then that social workers are often undermined? And I think that's one of the things we need to change over the next year, in the next years to come. And hopefully I'm doing that through what I do with social workers at universities. Social workers is the only profession that can fully, holistically understand a person's life. For me, social workers have recognised my right to work, my right to practice my own religion, and more recently, my right to be an emotional carer for my father and look after his well-being as well as mine. Having different social workers for the past 30 years, I have seen social workers change from being risk averse to enabling people to understand risks that people have undertaken. Social workers should be proud of their history of social injustice and enabling people to live a more fulfilled life. I think, sort of to end, it has enabled me to become the confident, challenging person I now am today. Unqualified social workers carry out assessments just does not fit for me. It needs to stay as a strengths-based approaches in social work. I know local authorities have sometimes diluted the assessment process so that unqualified social workers actually assess people, but this misses out on what I received, which was relationship building, advocacy from social workers, and they've made the biggest impact in my life. So I really do believe that social workers should be celebrating what they've done and continue the good work, and not let systems dilute what you've achieved to date.
Excellent. Thank you, Reshma. So social workers are an essential support system, but often undermined. I'm sure we'll tease that out in conversation. Let's go now to Becky Salter. As I said, Becky is a social work student at the University of South Wales. Hi.
Hiya. So as David mentioned, my name is Becky and I've been a member of BASW for just over 2 years. I first joined after starting my degree in social work at the University of South Wales. I felt it was important to keep myself informed and aware of what was happening in the actual world of social work, whilst also studying the theory and academia behind it. I soon became curious about discussions that were taking place at BASW, and after asking a seemingly innocent question one day about a subject that was going to be discussed, I was invited to interview to sit as the rep on the BASW Cymru committee, an opportunity I accepted and I've now been a part of for around 18 months. So with the title of this meeting today, there are 3 main words regarding the future of social work: bright, confident and diverse. The word confident was the one I initially stumbled on. At the start of the year, I would say that I felt confident about my student social work journey, but now I feel a little bit confused. It's a bit like a COVID-induced confusion. Confused about how my learning will be delivered as I enter my final year, confused about how my 100-day placement will take shape. And I don't think I'm alone in feeling that way, as other students I've been listening to are feeling the same way. Obviously, this is ultimately due to the COVID-19 created sense of caution regarding so many aspects of daily life. So that was my first word, confused. But out of that confusion, a few more C words sprang to mind, such as creativity, curiosity, connections and collaborations. Throughout the pandemic, the combination of social media platforms such as Twitter have really helped me stay connected to different areas of social work practice in a way that I'm not sure would have been there for me before. I've made so many amazing new connections with other students, all asking the same questions as me, and I've been lucky to be part of new collaborations with academics that I would normally be referencing in my assignments, which has required an element of confidence in my own ability to build relationships and have faith in my own voice. So the future as a social work student for me, despite still looking and feeling a little bit confused, has also begun to feel more connected. So I feel that this is a good place to end with a little quote. Apologies as I can't remember where I saw it, so I can't really credit the words, but it went something like this. You can be faced with uncertainty and be growing in wisdom at the same time, which I think for a proportion of social work students sums up our current take on the future. So with that, I'll go back to David.
Thank you, Becky. So Becky's feeling a little confused, understandably, in view of events of the last few months. A little less confident, but actually better connected, and that's going to be an interesting idea we can perhaps talk about as we go forward, because a lot of us have found new ways of connecting, of course, in the last number of weeks. Let's hear thirdly from Lena Dominelli, Professor of Social Work at the University of Stirling. Lena. Come in, Lena.
Okay, I am unmuting myself. Apologies for that. Thank you, David. I'll begin again. I just want to say what amazing contributions from Reshma and Becky. I don't think there's anything left for me to say, actually. You've said it all. So I'm going to try and say something differently. And like both of you, I'm going to focus on confidence and moving forward, because I think we need to move forward on the basis of our strengths and the many virtues and resiliences that we have. Yes, we did make a lot of mistakes, as Catrice was saying earlier on, but we also did a lot of things really well. And Reshma's testimony, and some you'll hear later, will play tribute to that. But I want to talk about the coming together or the convergence between societal values thanks to COVID. And I never thought I'd thank a disaster for what it does to society. But I think on this occasion, I can be forgiven a little bit for doing that. And that is because I think the way in which the general populace, I'm not talking about our politicians or anybody else, but the general populace has responded to need with what I would say are crucial social work values, our values that we've been talking about for years. And for me, the most important ones that are coming out of COVID-19 are the value of public services. Let's say it with confidence. We as social workers have been talking about universally available, publicly funded services, including social work services, for decades. And I'm so glad that this is becoming known, even in the media. So that's one element. And I think we need to argue even harder that these should be available free at the point of need, because that's a crucial inequality we've got to get rid of. Secondly, I think I've been really pleased at how civic duty and the willingness to help others, to help themselves and be helped and ask for help. So our duty of care towards others, which is the foundation of social work at its best. And so I think we are really pleased to see that happening. Also, I think, and the Black Lives Matters movement and the response, although before that happened, I was moaning about how society was going backwards on diversity as someone who's spent her whole life arguing for the importance of diversity and social justice in social work, from sexism, racism, disableism, mentalism, homophobia, the whole lot, poverty, which was the first one that I started with, class differentiation. I'm so pleased to see us revisiting that again and saying, yes, diversities in all their forms matter. And thank God for social work standing up for that. The other thing I think that's really important is our community base. Now, we had that, and I have to say we in the UK did until 1986, when the wonderful Margaret Thatcher decided to change the rules and take England and Wales out of the holistic arena of social work, which included work with individuals, groups, and communities, believe it or not. And I started in social work as a community worker, and I'm very proud of that heritage and history, and I still do it. But now I'm calling it community social work, because we need to build and bridge the two together. And that is based on the notion of mutuality, self-help, having the resources that you need when you need them, co-production, which the other two speakers talked about as asking people what they want and helping them to get what they need when they need it. Not waiting for tomorrow, not saying meet these bureaucratic values, not pretending that they don't have the rights that they're entitled to. And that brings us to social justice, which is the other really important value in social work. And social justice is the foundation that we have to build on, because that's what's going to enable us to lose all these structural inequalities that we as social workers abhor. And I think it's really important that in that context, the demands of diverse populations, and particularly Black and Asian minority ethnic groups, but other ethnic groups, and the white working class as well, that's left out, marginalized, and excluded. We as social workers ought to have their voices heard, listen to them, but also point to new directions. And one of those new directions, which is not that well expressed in social work yet, is environmental justice. And for me, environmental justice is a key part of social justice. You cannot have one without the other. Maybe we can discuss that later on. And the third thing that I think is society is now saying we want to change. And that is what social workers have been saying for many years, in my experience. And certainly I've been a strong proponent of that. Let's change, let's transform society, because what we have isn't good enough. Maybe great for some people, but it's so awful for so many people. We've got to change. And so in that moving forward, I think we've got to go for equality, which is a fundamental basis for us. We have to broaden our practice portfolio and move into new areas that sometimes are scary, but we've done it with the COVID pandemic. So we know we can do it with anything because we use our generic skills to build from the known to the unknown. And also, I think we need to value research. And again, COVID is showing us that without research, we actually cannot do what we need to do. And I also think as a social worker, and I'm very proud to say that, we need to be research-led, because we have to be able to say to people, actually, you can have whatever choice you want, but this choice over here is based on some things you might like to think about, and it actually would help you achieve what you want much more effectively. So that's one thing. I think we have to go for co-production or working with the people that we serve. We are servants of the public as professionals, and we have the right as citizens to be served, and residents of this country, because not everyone's a citizen, to be served by these professionals, including social workers and the health workers and all the others that have been clapped for on a Thursday regularly. The social workers, when are we going to start clapping for ourselves? Never mind for anybody else to do it. We don't even do it because we're our own worst critics. And I'm first in the queue for doing that, I suspect. The other thing that I think we have to do is to provide platforms or spaces for people who have not been heard to be heard. And we can do that because we're good mobilizers and creators of these spaces and narratives. I also think we need to think about education and training. And I guess you'd expect me to say that given my current position. I am really, really keen that we provide the training, the skill set, the knowledge, the research that social workers of the future, and except for people like me, who are going to be the social workers of the past fairly soon, the rest of you are the social workers of the future, and I look forward to you providing me with services when I need them, although I hope it's a long time away. And that is that we need to do things like work in the community, community development. Let's get back to some of those skills that we had before and we know about. Go and read Eileen Younghusband if you don't want to read anyone else. We need to look at all levels of training, from pre-qualifying to qualifying, post-qualifying, continuing professional development, specialisms. And I'm really pleased to say that I am now going to lead in a new direction that I haven't done before, which is to teach on an MSc in disaster intervention and humanitarian aid, starting this autumn at Stirling, remotely, yes, because we have to use the remote technologies to the best that we can. But I'm really excited about that because it means that we can start claiming our ground in the disaster areas and health pandemic areas. We've been silent there too long because we've always worked in the background in those areas, but nobody knew about it. And certainly the media didn't come to us and say, hey, social workers, what do you have to say? What's your contribution? So I think we have to do that. And the final thing I think we need in moving forward is innovating together so that we move forward together as one. And that means becoming alert to our possibilities and opportunities, but also engaging in that critical, reflective approach to practice that we're also very good at. And I think together we can build that exciting, bright, new, hopeful future for all of us, service users, practitioners, academics, and dare I say, I hope also for the policymakers who need help to know what they need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. I see someone's comment. I think Ian Lawrence has commented on the chat saying, "What an absolute privilege to hear Lena talk in those terms." That's terrific grounding for us. Thank you very much. And you've spelt out some more positives coming from the crisis around this new sense of civic duty, willingness to help others, and more of a communal sense of enterprise. And let me take those thoughts to some of our other panelists and see if they're thinking that too. I want to turn to Dominic. Dominic Waters from, as I said, he's a student at the University of Kent, and Dominic's a single parent. And Dominic, I wonder if you share that perspective that Lena has set out for us.
Well, thank you first for the opportunity of being here. Yes, I am a single parent and a single dad, and I do share the community aspect that Lena was talking about, and in building up to this opportunity, I was thinking about what the future of social work will look like, and the words bright, confident, and diverse. And I was also thinking about how Marcus Rashford has made it kind of center stage, this discussion around food poverty. And speaking as a single dad from the most rundown part of my council estate, and someone who's in receipt of the food vouchers that Rashford was campaigning for, I believe that the kind of the term food insecurity more speaks to the lived experience of food poverty and the young people that experience it. And so I was, and also the young people's ability to be bright and confident, as we're discussing in terms of the future. And it also brought me back to thinking of when I was on placement that got terminated early due to the coronavirus. And I was at like a high risk local authority scheme for children in care. And they mainly relied on like donations or collections from local businesses or supermarkets for their nourishment in terms of, bread or anything, any substance. And I saw, unfortunately, how like food was used, or choice food was used as a kind of behavior controlling mechanism. And without getting into the kind of like ethical focus around that, which is important, I just thought that there is a need for this sort of community togetherness, and there is also a need for kind of a honest discussion about the failings or perhaps failings of the corporate parent regarding the nutrition of certain young people. And I just thought that food is such a communal and kind of community thing that is shared between all of us. And I think it needs to be something that becomes an integral part of social work's future, and with a focus of having food security for service users as one of the kind of goals for the future, for the bright, confident, and diverse future. So that's what I was considering.
Thanks indeed. I mean, food as an emblem for many of the issues that social work is facing is a really interesting concept. Let me come to our third student, Emma Grady from Edge Hill University. Emma, what does the future look like from where you're standing?
Hi everybody. Yes, my name's Emma Grady. I'm a mental health nursing and social work student from Edge Hill. For me, when I think of the future, after all the troubles that we've been through with placements, I still feel excited for the future. From a student perspective, although we've had placements ending early and not knowing whether we're going to be able to qualify for the third years, I feel that, like Becky said before, the current climate has brought a lot of students together. New and innovative ways of staying connected to the world have been created. I mean, I never heard of Zoom before COVID-19. I didn't even know what it was, but now I consider myself kind of a pro, you know. So it's like using the social media platforms. I'm big for using Twitter anyway, but even more so over the past couple of months, there just seems to be a buzz of using Twitter and wanting to stay connected. And that's where myself and a couple of other students got together and thought, how can we keep social work students together, being able to learn together going forward, and just having a bit of fun and just not being alone in this crisis. So we decided to create the Student Social Work Hub. And it means that now really you're never more than a few clicks away to being connected to somebody. And I think although we had technology before, even more so now, it's not the same as being in the same room as somebody, but we can, you know, pop a message to each other or just video call each other. And also from what I've noticed on social media, there seems to be a lot of people wanting to share their knowledge. For example, the Social Work Cats and Rocket Science book, their authors created some webinars which were fabulous, just so students had something to keep learning, something to attend, and, you know, a bit of a community gathering. And even more recently, Siobhan McLean is doing Wednesday webinars, which myself and Becky are involved in. And I think it is about the community, and no matter who you are, whether you're an academic or a first year student, we need to come together in the future, and especially at times like this. So I certainly think the future does look bright, although it's uncertain times, and although it's, you know, scary times as well. I think going forward we're going to have a lot of students that have been through the COVID-19 pandemic who are more knowledgeable than ever before, more connected and more diverse. So I'm excited about it, and I know it's scary, but I'm really looking forward to the future. So yeah.
Emma, do you share Becky's slight sort of nervousness? I mean, she says she started off the year confident, a bit rocked by what's happened. Are you in the same place on that?
I am in the same place, but the way our situation has been dealt with myself personally, our university at Edge Hill, they've been fantastic. So I've felt more at ease because of my personal situation, but through the student and newly qualified social worker group, I do understand that there is a lot of unrest, and I think I'm very lucky knowing that I feel quite secure in what's happening with my placement, because I could finish it. And although I'm due to have a nursing placement, there's been other arrangements as well. So I do feel what Becky feels, mainly because of the other students from the student group that have, you know, voiced their concerns and their worries. So yeah, there is a lot of worry about, and I think each individual student has their own experience on things. It's not just a blanket, you know, everybody's worried. It's each person has their own difficult situations. So yeah, I do share what Becky says, definitely.
Thank you. Let me come to Ian Thomas, who, as I said earlier, has faced a lot of challenges in his life, and I'd just be interested for Ian's take on how the future looks to him. Ian.
Thanks, David, and everyone else for being here. I was just like listening to Emma then, is thinking like connection kept coming up for me, and I think that for me, social work is a relationship-based profession, and that seeks to kind of authentically engage with other people and find sort of, you know, helpful solutions to human suffering. And you know, and to help people be with that, and ultimately to try and make ourselves redundant in that process, right? And I know you kind of mentioned I'd had some lived experiences, and I guess you know, for me, when I reflect on my own experiences, you know, I kind of was very much engaged in the criminal justice system. I got arrested 35 times and did 6 prison sentences, and I'm glad I got out because I clearly wasn't that good at it. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, and no one ever really sat me down and said, oh, why are you doing this and what can we do to help you stop? You know, and until I met a duty solicitor that helped me kind of look at things differently. And I think that's what social work is. It's that intervention that says, let's recognise the human being within this, you know, And I think that with that in mind, I think it's a good time for social work. I think that there's a preconceived idea about what social work is, that if you think social work, you think local authority, you think social services, you think government, but social work is a standalone profession, and the government chooses to subscribe to what social work has to offer in order to try and find, I hope, authentic solutions to human suffering and challenges within our communities, And I wonder if now is a time where social work can mobilize communities and build on the social movements like Black Lives Matter and kind of mutual aid, where we can support communities. And, we've seen real acts of humanity as a result of the adversity that we've experienced and connection in a new way. And I think that adversity it kind, in some way, it finds its own sort of equality. It kind of, when we're all in the same boat, we seem to remember our humanity, and the ties that bind us together seem to be stronger than those that could tear us apart. So if we're going to build on this a bit more, then maybe bright, confident, diverse. I like that. So what's the role of social work education in this? Policy writers and different agencies outside statutory duties, and also how can we kind of work on this to support ourselves with sort of public protection and public perception, and I think that we do run the risk of the state owning social work, and we need to try and move away from that a bit, because I don't think that's helpful for social work necessarily, because I don't know if the state has the same agenda as social work always.
Thank you, Ian. I'm conscious we haven't talked much about diversity yet, and I want to come on to that in just a moment. But I don't want to lose your important thread, Ian, about mobilising communities. And let me just bounce that off one or two of the other panel members. Let me come to Lena. You've been around the sector for a while, and some themes come round and round, don't they? And maybe mobilising communities is something we've heard before. How do we get it right this time?
Great question. Hard answer. Mainly, I think in the past, there wasn't a groundswell of support for working from the community. There were brilliant ideas, and it worked really well in places like Wakefield, where community social work really took off. But the mistake, as far as I see it, and I would attribute some of this blame to me too, is that we were young and naive at the time, so please don't make the same mistake. And we assumed we could change the world by saying that it needed changing and having our evidence. Yes, we always had plenty of that, but it was always ignored. I think the mistake we made was to not include the policymakers and get them pulling behind us. And I think when Eileen Younghusband died tragically in a car accident, she had the voice of social work heard in public, in government, at the highest levels. We have nothing like that now. BASW's doing a sterling job of trying to get there, but I think we need to be much more engaged. And this means we've got to build a grassroots movement of social workers linking up with BASW, the trade unions that we are all in, and get the politicians to start listening to us. Because if they had, a lot of the things that we've been saying, and we are going round and round in circles, would have been done by now. But I always remember anytime I had another new idea, and I had plenty of them, on how to make lives better for people who were marginalized, who came from the same sort of really tough working class areas that I did, poverty and all the rest of it. Education saw me out, thanks to my parents' hard work. But they didn't want to listen. Why? Oh, that would take too much money. Oh, you want us to spend 4 hours per visit per person when you've got 10 minutes? No, thank you, that's too expensive. And that was always at the policy-making level. And social work has been starved for funds from the very beginning of its foundation. It was supposed to be one of the universal services along with healthcare. It didn't happen because we were paying off our war debt, mainly to the US at the time, and it took us 70 years to pay it off. But now we paid it off. Where's that money gone? I want it to come to social work. I want us to start arguing Let's have community-based universal services. Let's have that one-stop shop where you can go to a social worker, ask for help, and they'll tell you where to go to get the help you need, and they'll have the resources to do it with, instead of skimping and scraping. And, you know, Dominic, you talked about food insecurity, which was great. But you know what? I know of social workers who've gone with their own little boxes of things because people were too hard up to even buy anything, or go to the food bank, which had run out of food, or was limiting people on the amount of food they could have. It is appalling that we're in that situation in this day and age, in one of the richest countries in the world. So yes, let's get our voice out there. Let's be united. It's really important we unite and push behind BASW. BASW, I think, thanks to Ruth, is an open door at the moment. We can get things done by asking and coming together. You know, what if all of the social workers, there must be hundreds of thousands of us in the country, all got together and said, this is what we want. Let's have a debate in Parliament about why social work is important and why social workers have good ideas that we should start listening to as the policymakers.
Okay, thank you, Lena. Let me come back to one of our students on this theme, Becky, perhaps. I mean, Becky, you are a student, but as I said, you've actually been working in social care in the community for a good number of years, and I just wonder whether you have any thoughts on how social work can help to mobilise communities in the aftermath of COVID. Becky.
That's an interesting question. So my area was working within residential children's care, and you know, there was very much a focus on healthy eating, and it was getting that balance of not becoming too institutionalized in the home, as in, you know, giving the children choice and helping them learn about food, and learn how to create meals so that they could take that as a life skill with them. But obviously we had a budget within the home too, and we, you know, had to help the children understand, you know, that budget by taking them shopping with us. Yeah, I think it is a really difficult one, because I think it's always going to be there, isn't it? I think I've been quite fortunate in my upbringing, and I've learned a lot about food and ways to be economical. But I think within children's services in particular, the one link that I sometimes think is missing between children's services and sort of social work is that when I was a manager, I really wanted to have some social work students come in on a placement with me. And for some reason it never kind of came off, and I just think that's a bit of a missing link there about, you know, I kind of understood the pressures that were on social workers and their caseloads, but ultimately they, you know, I had a child that they placed in my care, and I wanted them to understand what it was like for that child to be in residential care. They've made a decision, and sometimes I don't know if they understood how difficult it was for that child and for us to sort of initially build relationships. And food becomes a good way of building relationships sometimes, you know, going out for meals and just cooking, you know, in the kitchen and stuff. But I sometimes think that that's a little bit of a gap there, that we'll go through our training about social work and we'll learn about theories, but actually when it comes to children's services and residential care, I don't think a lot of social workers understand what it's actually like once they've made a decision and they've placed a child somewhere, whether that's foster care or local authority care or whatever. But I think I've got that bit more understanding because I've had to build relationships with children who really haven't wanted to trust me, haven't wanted to live, you know, in the home. They haven't wanted to get to know the people that, you know, are there to look after them, and we've just really wanted the best, you know. So you know, I don't know, I think I've probably gone off topic a little bit about food there, but that's my take on it.
No, that's, and can I just check I heard you right? You said you offered placements and your offer wasn't taken up? No, we would work closely with you know, social work teams about whether it was a right placement for the, you know, through the child. We go through quite a thorough assessment and matching criteria, but still I just don't think the social workers, sometimes they needed a home for that child and they needed it quite carefully, you know, quickly, and I wanted a nice long transition to introduce a child into my home and get to know us and
think about decorating their bedroom, and just, simple things like that, so that they wanted to come and that they took ownership that this wasn't just going to be another placement, this wasn't just going to be another move, this was going to be their home. And, do little things like that, when they came round, we would try and bake things that we found out that they liked. So it'd be like, come round for a cup of tea and a cookie, or before they moved in. And social workers, I don't think at the time always had that time to do that. So that was a bit of a missing link.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's pick up diversity. As I said, we've not heard a lot about that in the conversation so far, and it's one of our three themes. And there's some very encouraging stats today from UCAS. People may have seen those, saying that applicants for social work degree courses are the most diverse of any course at universities, by ethnicity, by age, and indeed by income group. And there are more students from the bottom, lowest household income group than from the most advantaged background. And that's almost unique among university courses. But we don't always see this coming through in the way social work is presented. Some comments I've seen on social media about this panel and the fact our three students are all white, and that's fair comment. Let me turn to Jerry Nazowska on this and ask her what BASW's doing about diversity. Jerry.
Thanks, David. And I think it's probably helpful to talk about influence, because it's one of the things that gets raised a lot, is why social work doesn't have more influence. How can we have more influence? How, what's BASW doing? What's social work leadership doing? And the word diversity, I think, is really key to influence, because diversity gives us the insight and the ideas to help us to do better, to help build our confidence, to help us make a difference. And I think COVID-19 and also, the really shocking racial murder of George Floyd has made that lack of bright, confident, diverse in our society quite starkly clear. And I think also has made people question social work and question BASW, and that's completely right, because BASW presents itself as sort of living by a code of ethics which starts with anti-oppressive practice, and so it's absolutely right to challenge the diversity of the representation within social work leadership within BASW. And I think where we're starting from, where we're at the moment, is I think there's a real will to do better, and I think there's also the right challenge. There is so much challenge. In the last 4 weeks, I've had more conversations and more questioning and more push about this than I've had in 18 years of being a social worker, and I really am glad about that. The thing I don't want is for that to that energy to kind of ebb away, and people to feel disappointed and that nothing's changing. So in terms of what we're trying to do, I think, again, there's some diversity to build on. So there is diversity within BASW, not enough, and some of it is invisible and some of it is unvoiced, and what we really need is visible, loud representation of the social work profession, which is itself a really diverse profession and has a wonderful strength in that. So we started a programme about a year or so ago within BASW Council, which is the board of directors, to set ourselves an equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, set ourselves a plan. It's something that's always been there, but unless you make it specific and central, you don't make progress. And we started with the board because learning from the NHS, particularly around equality, shows that that's where you've got to make a difference. We set ourselves minimum standards, and I'll have to report on those in the annual general meeting in September. I can't report on them now because it's a confidential questionnaire to council members, and also we've got elections coming up, so the mix could change. But what we have done is co-opted additional members to the board, because again, it takes too long for people to come forward and come through and feel encouraged. And I think the really crucial thing that we've done recently is set up an advisory group around equality, diversity and inclusion. And some of the people who are in the chats and the people posing questions have challenged that group and become members of that group. And again, that's where I want to hold on to the energy, and that group can help us make progress, because ultimately, if we've got representation, more people are welcomed into the professional association, then we've got the influence that we need, that Lena was talking about. So I think this is a really important moment actually for the future, and it's great that it's BASW's Heritage Year and our year for kind of looking back and looking forward, because we do need to do better.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Can I come back to Reshma? Reshma, as you told us, you've been engaging with social workers for 30 years, and I just wonder how you've seen over that time diversity improve, or maybe not change as much as it needs to, in all respects, in all the definitions of diversity. Are you there, Reshma? You need to unmute.
Sorry. In my personal opinion, I think where people have had disabilities and gone into social work, yeah, I don't know what reasons, but they've really struggled. So I know friends of mine that have qualified as social workers, but due to their disability or whatever reason, they've actually struggled to get into practice. So that's quite worrying. In terms of social workers that I've actually had, predominantly I've had white social workers in my life. I think one Asian lady and one male. But in terms of the student cohort, which is where I've seen the biggest difference, I was thinking about it then, but our master's cohort in one of the universities I work at there's at least 25% of them are men and black. So that's, I've seen a real difference, because I've been working at university since 2005, and the change, I think a lot of it was to do with the widening participation strategies that took place quite a few years ago. But I've seen a real change in the diversity of the social workers, but not so much when you then look at who's actually training those social workers. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, but when you actually look at sort of the academic makeup in comparison to the student makeup, we don't seem to have the same balances all the time. Does that help?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Can I come to Dominic? Dominic, you were telling us that I think that you live in a low-income neighbourhood. I wonder whether, looking around your course at Kent, and indeed looking around the student body more broadly on social media, whether you feel there are enough of those people coming from those backgrounds into the profession.
Well, in terms of my the makeup of my kind of cohort at Kent, where I'm one of the student reps, it's SSP SSR, and it's at Medway, and it's a very diverse bunch, with very, but at the same time, men are kind of underrepresented. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very kind of contentious issue, and there is definitely a need for, kind of a proactive and transparency that is kind of takes on, the historical emotions of why there needs to be way more inclusion. I don't know if my head's a bit of a scatterbrain, but I hope. And there was a video recently which I think definitely should be noted by Diane, who I think it was put up by BASW as well, where she speaks about her, her views on kind of, I guess, the lack of responses or the slow responses by social work bodies regarding the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement, which was actually a point that I'd raised separately before I'd seen the tweet or video, but I think it's definitely worth looking at. And I do think that BASW, like even the fact that I'm here, a single dad, as you said, from a council estate in Kent, is brilliant. Someone's put Diana's video up in the chat. Check it out. But I think it does speak to BASW's want inclusion and kind of, if I can say, ear to the street of social work for students coming up, and to the hopefully diverse future. I don't know how bright or confident I have been today, but hopefully this will move us forward. I don't know.
Can I come back to Ian? Ian, through all the engagement you've had in the past with social workers, indeed with other agencies, would it have helped more if the people you were engaging with had come from more diverse backgrounds, do you think?
Yeah, like most definitely. I mean, it's. I think that there's probably an untapped resource there with people with kind of lived experience that can come and support, people who in communities, So I guess for me, I was when I went to a treatment centre in my early 20s, a drug rehabilitation centre. All the counsellors were, recovering addicts who had probably done more prison than I had, and that meant something to me, that was really important for it, trust and engagement. Because I didn't know there was another way to live, and if there was, it wasn't possible for someone like me. And there was therapeutic value and identification, and it could kind of open my eyes up really to see something beyond, what I was presented with and presenting. And I think in terms of social work, I think in my university degree, there was, a lot of representation that did reflect society, but there was only a few men. I think there was four men in the whole of, in the whole of my course out of 90 something students. And I don't know about anyone else, but, when I was growing up, sitting on park benches, smoking drugs, no one talked about growing up to be a social worker. That was for sure. And it was very, very different ambitions, and we had very different role models, but I've worked with a lot of young people. I've specifically done quite a lot of direct work with young boys, and who are often in conflict with the law and stuff like that. And I've probably lost count the amount of times they've gone, when I grow up, I want to be a social worker. And that's really nice, because you're offering them hope. You're giving them a choice, right? And that's what we're here to do, is to give people choices.
Yeah. I wonder what we can do to make it a more attractive profession for a broader cohort of people. Becky, you've turned to social work in, should we say, mid-career? What was it that made you decide to come over from social care?
I got a bit burnt out, if I'm really honest. So it seems strange to jump from one thing to the next, but I just decided that I didn't want to be a manager for the rest of my life, really. Not here with violins and stuff. It's quite a difficult, lonely, isolated job in a way, being a manager and having all those decisions and stuff. And I just found that I'd done lots of things, and I'd met some wonderful children and really thought I'd done my best, but there was always something a bit missing, and I didn't have the social work degree. And when I was looking at other options, there was one particular area of being like an IRO that I was really interested in, because sometimes I would get quite frustrated when I was sitting in LAC reviews, and and felt that sometimes social workers were dipping in and out, and even the IRO sometimes was dipping in and out, but they didn't really know the children as well as I knew the children. So and I felt then a little bit like the child's voice got lost. Mine was halfway there, but that was kind of my reason, really. I just thought, right, it's about time, do the social work degree, get involved, and I think I've got a bit more of an insight, so I've got a bit more of an understanding from both sides of the fence, really. That was part of my reasoning behind it. But then I've got the placements for me, where I've started off, and I think a lot of students do this. You kind of come into it thinking you'll end up in one area, and then you probably end up somewhere completely different. And my 80-day placement was such an eye-opener for me that I just want my third-year placement to be back in there, because I was working with PACT, a third sector charity within prisons, and I would never ever have thought of even asking, even putting that down, even if that was a possibility. But it's really challenged me. I've had to really reflect. I've had to really look inside and you know, realised that actually I thought I was a people person, and that with my social work head on I could work with, you know, anybody or everybody, because I could be compassionate, but actually, you know, you work with some individuals and you have to realise, no, there are areas of discrimination inside me that I have to work on. So that for me has been such an eye-opener that if I could go back in there for my third year, I'd be really happy with that.
Thank you, thank you. Lena, as an educationist, what are your thoughts on broadening the cohort of entrants into the profession?
Well, I absolutely agree. We've got to broaden the cohort, but as I've been saying in the chat boxes, it's a lot bigger than just increasing representation. We have to change pedagogic processes so that we start from where some of the people who are diverse are at, valuing their experience and knowledge to begin with. Not seeing everything as being about the person or the individual, but about structural limitations. Like, for example, until quite recently, it was really quite difficult for people who came from a collective way of working to have that recognized in universities, for example. I think we also need to change some of the way in which we assess people and what we value. This means that the criteria for assessment, and the best way to do that is to increase the number of diverse people, from BMEs to all the other diversities, on assessment panels, not just in recruitment. It's got to be so much more than that. It's got to change the institution. It's got to change our culture as well. And I've spent, since 1988, I wrote Anti-Racist Social Work, a challenge for white practitioners. I did not call it a challenge for white practitioners for fun. It was because they were the group that really needed to start looking at changing their own behavior, changing their institutions, changing workplaces. We have lost a lot of the possibilities that we had to change workplaces as they became more and more business-like and run like businesses. And that includes the university. Let me see how much money you bring in. How many students have you brought in? And I hasten to add, actually, I've been privileged. The universities I belong to have not had to have that approach. But we are being asked to kind of like, how many publications have you had? How much research money have you brought in? And that means you stack the table against those who don't have that experience to begin with, because you're running to stand still. And I often joke, you know, I keep saying, okay, where I am at my point in the profession, I can only go down. So what am I going to lose? And that means that I'm a risk taker. Somebody talked earlier on about social workers being risk averse. It isn't the social workers per se that are risk averse. It's the institutions that are, because they can only get money if they meet certain criteria. And if they don't, and we're going to face this with COVID now, because the government, the one sector that it refuses to fund, and some of you will know if you've read my tweets, I've been trying to get a voice for money going into higher education, money going into students, bigger, more bursaries, funding for living as a student, and living at a decent level of living, not just kind of working 24 hours a day because you've got to study and you've got to do your work. I know about that because I paid for all of my university education. I never had free education because I didn't come here early enough to do that. And sadly, I have to pay for my sons as well, because that went a long, long time ago. We need to get back to those things. So we need institutional, cultural, and personal change. And I think the mistake we make in social work is focusing primarily on personal. That is really important, but only according to research anyway. And it's not a minimizing only, but only 3% of social workers are racist. All the others are anti-racist people. But they work in institutions that have criteria, that are institutionally bound, culturally bound, and they are racist. And we've seen that with the Black Lives Matter movement. We've, you know, like social workers have been saying, let's recognize people as, if they live here, we should give them all the rights that a person who is a citizen of the UK. And yet our legislation doesn't allow us to do that. We've had to change how we deal with asylum seekers and refugees, again, because the legislation said we had to. So I think we have to change those things. And it takes me back to what I said earlier on. We need to get collective action going on this to make our voices strong and really powerful, because otherwise we'll be having this again, I've no doubt, and that really depresses me. And please don't, because I'm an optimistic person by heart, and I've had enough of being depressed in disasters and COVID, thank you. So let's help each other become optimistic by saying, yeah, we're going to do something that's going to be collective. And BASW is in a very good position to take this forward because it's got all the right values. It's got lots of good people leading it and working for it. And that includes all of us who are members. And we can do a lot more.
Great.
Thank you.
That sounds to me like a very good note to conclude our conversation on. We've run out of our allotted time. Someone's just commented I see in the chat box, great to hear old, well, let's say older voices as well as new. And I think that's been the beauty of this panel. It's been we've had a really good range of experience and new optimism, and I hope all the viewers have found it worthwhile. I'm going to hand back now to Catrice.
Thank you very much. I'm so inspired by what Lena says, and in some ways I think, and how can I possibly do anything or raise anything up more than what you have done, Lena. So thank you very much to all of you for what you have brought to this conversation. One of the things that is coming up for me is this idea of the lived experience of the people who use the service, and yet we seem to be avoiding our own lived experience as social workers, as humans, as people who are passionate, who love, who laugh, who cry, and not recognizing our own worth and our own skills. And I think it's only when we start to go into what we can offer that we can step towards each other and build something powerful together. And when I say step towards each other, I don't mean just everybody who's working at the front line. I went and got something for you, because at the end of most of my sessions when I'm working with people, I ask everybody to imagine that there's threads going from them to the people that they normally work with. So it might be when I was involved in play work, it might have been social workers to social workers, perhaps to some of the medical staff, police possibly to social workers, when we were looking at child protection. And then at the end of the session that I might have run, I asked them now to imagine threads going from themselves to everybody who they connected with. And suddenly you realize that through Twitter, through BASW, through what has happened over these 2 days, it's not threads that go like this, where there are whole gaps in what we are offering to people. Suddenly we are creating this network together, and we are creating these connections together, and we are relating policy, we're connecting with people who are creating the systems, people within the institutions, with management. And it's only at those intersections where we have the people who use the service, where we have the people who have disabilities, where we have the researchers, all intersecting. It's only on those intersections that the strength lies to support each other and to support the people that we work with. Our strength lies in our intersections, our weaving together of our incredible, profound, deep wisdom that we have gathered over our years. We cannot deny our own wisdom. We cannot deny that we need each other. and we need each other's wisdom in order to have those intersections that we can lie ourselves upon for support, and we can lie the people on for support who need it, those people who we work with. In order to do that, we need to reach out to each other. In order to reach out to each other, we need to be vulnerable. We need to say, I need your help. I don't know enough. In order to be vulnerable, we need to be brave. We need to be courageous. You are all incredibly brave already, because you are all here and you're all turning up every day, trying to make it better. Continue to be brave. Now I'm going to hand over to Ruth, who is going to tell you more about the next session that's coming up. Stay brave, people.
Hi, everybody. So we come to the last session of our Heritage Festival, marking our birthday. Not the 2-day conference we planned, but we hope to do that in March in 2021 in Birmingham, if we're far enough out of the pandemic by then. So come there when next we can. Before we get to some fabulous music, please stay logged on. You can have it on in the background, cook to it, have a drink. I wanted to give my and BASW's thanks and a big virtual hug to the many people who've made this virtual festival possible. It's been really fabulous, really enjoyable from my point of view. It's always, always a worry, and then you execute it, you're thinking, this is amazing. And it's been made amazing by everybody who's contributed. Thank you to all the attendees. We've had over 500 people involved with this. Thank you, and thank you for all your comments. Many thanks to all our happy birthday well-wishers, the providers of music, all our panelists. You know who you are. Thank every one of you for contributing. Thank you to the session chairs. Thank you to Jerry, to John Dudley, to Margaret Holloway, to David Brindle. We've heard many different voices and perspectives through the various parts of the festival, and we could have heard more and we could have heard different ones. We are fundamentally a reflective profession, and we will learn from what went right, what we missed, whose stories we weren't reflecting in our discussions, and where stories are missing in our history, which brings me to my thanks for Catrice, who throughout the sessions has woven together strands of the stories about social work and social workers told from multiple perspectives. She's helped us remember what happened in previous sessions and helped us reflect on what stories are dominating and what's being marginalised. Something that's come through all the sessions is the fire in social workers, the passion to make a difference in the world, in practice, politics, research, education, and in the connections between all of these, and in the importance of speaking out, being brave and supporting each other. And I wrote that before I saw Patrice's little woven thing, connecting between all of those. BASW of the future needs to be nourishing, inspiring, a place where social work and social workers can continue to develop together, to meet the challenges and take forward the possibilities of today and tomorrow. My final thanks go to colleagues across the UK in my staff team who supported the production of these events through finding panellists, getting happy birthday messages, finding musicians, supporting the technology. Thank you all. I'm just going to name two. Thank you, Gabby Zavalli, our Heritage Officer, who's done so much to prepare convening our Heritage Group and will continue to support the Heritage projects over the coming 12 months and is liaising with so many people who are interested in our heritage. So thank you so much, Gabby. And Steph Davis, who like Gabby has worked lots of long hours, done so much to prepare, calmly solved all sorts of technical difficulties in a very short space of time, made it possible for us all to get together.
We wanted to be here with you to say thank you so much for being with us. We wanted to say thank you for going on such a long journey with us. And I wanted to finish with just a few words that I wrote myself. And it is to do with words, because words shape us. And I want us to think about the words that we use to describe us and the work that we do and the people we work with and the people we work for. So people, I call you all to arms. So people, I ask you all to fight. So people, I ask you to unite, to shine bright, make words your lights, to quell dark nights, come ascend your heights and manifest your might. For words, they help us all combine, and stories help us all to bind together as a humankind, together as a humankind. Thank you for being part of the 50th anniversary of BASW with us. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening wherever you are, and stay brave.
Thank you so much, Catrice. That was a lovely end.